I'm reintroducing the Survivors' Bill of Rights in the States Act of 2021. This measure, which Senator Shaheen has joined me in sponsoring, builds on an initiative on which the two of us worked together in 2016. Entitled the Survivors' Bill of Rights Act, that earlier legislation cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee in June of 2016 during my tenure as its chairman. The House of Representatives introduced a similar package of rights some months later, and that version was enacted in the fall of 2016 with my strong support. The 2016 statute provides very important rights for victims of sexual violence, but that act only accomplishes those cases that are federal. Such rights include, for example, the right to know the results of your forensic exam, the right to have evidence preserved for a certain period, and lastly, the right to notice before your forensic kit is destroyed. A young sexual assault survivor, Amanda Wynn, who advocated for these rights at the federal level, now is leading the effort to persuade other jurisdictions to adopt the same rights for all sexual assault victims. One of those jurisdictions is my home state of Iowa, which this summer adopted a package of rights that closely modeled after the federal Survivors' Bill of Rights. I want to take the opportunity to again thank Amanda, who arrived in my office 6 years ago and convinced me the importance of working with her on this important initiative. Amanda also later testified before the Judiciary Committee, not once, but twice, at my invitation, about the importance of protecting the rights of victims of sexual violence in our criminal justice system. Amanda worked with Senator Shaheen on this same legislation as well as this senator, and I'm pleased to partner with Senator Shaheen again in introducing today's measure that will hopefully affect more states adopting this legislation. This bill that we sponsored then gives each state a financial incentive to adopt new rights for survivors in all sex crime cases, modeled on the same rights that victims in federal cases now enjoy. Each state that extends these same rights to survivors of sexual violence would then be eligible to receive a federal grant under the legislation that we've introduced. The amount of each state grant would be calculated based on the formula that is used to calculate stop grants funding to states under a program that's authorized by the Violence Against Women Act. Finally, this measure that we have introduced would authorize $20 million annually for each of the next 5 fiscal years to support the implementation of the new grant program established by this bill. So once again, I want to thank Senator Shaheen for joining me in leading this legislation and for her commitment to working to increase protections for victims of sexual violence. I also want to thank the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence for working with us on the bill's development. Finally, I thank Congresswoman Jackie Speer and Kelly Armstrong for initiating this measure in the other chamber. I urge my colleagues to join us in co-sponsoring this bipartisan, bicameral legislation.